August 17, 1944. Channel Islands, St. Helier Harbor, Jersey, 02:47 hours. 16 landing craft floated in darkness 3 kilometers offshore. Engines idled low. No lights, no voices. 1,200 British commandos sat in silence, equipment secured, weapons loaded. Blackened faces, taped gear. The sea was calm, visibility less than 50 meters in the pre-dawn fog. Each craft carried 75 men. 3 waves. The first wave would hit the beach at 03:15, 28 minutes from now. Naval gunfire support stood ready, 2 destroyers positioned 4 kilometers out. Artillery coordinates had been confirmed. Beach obstacles had been charted. German defensive positions were known. Minefields mapped. Guard rotations timed. The operation had been approved 48 hours earlier. Final authorization received at 20:00 the previous evening. Embarkation completed by midnight. The flotilla had crossed from Portsmouth without incident. Radio silence maintained throughout. Now they waited in the dark water, rocking gently. The men did not speak. Some checked their watches. Some stared toward the invisible shore. The craft commanders stood at their stations, eyes forward, hands near throttles. At 02:47, a coded radio transmission reached the flotilla command vessel. The Commodore received it personally. He read it once. He read it again. He did not respond immediately. He stood in the cramped bridge, the paper in his hand. Behind him, 16 craft full of men continued their slow drift toward the invasion point. The order to advance had not been given, but neither had any order to withdraw. Operation Constellation was the planned liberation of Jersey, the largest of the Channel Islands. The islands had been occupied by German forces since June 1940. By August 1944, with Allied armies advancing across France, the strategic calculus had shifted. The German garrisons, estimated at 11,000 troops across Jersey and Guernsey, were isolated. Supply lines were severed. But they remained heavily armed, well fortified, and under orders to defend. British command had debated for weeks whether to assault the islands or simply contain them. The arguments for assault, eliminating German positions, freeing the civilian population, denying the enemy any foothold on British territory. The arguments against, high casualties expected for limited strategic gain with Allied forces needed on the continent. The decision had gone back and forth through the command chain. On August 15, authorization came through. The 30th Assault Unit and the 4th Special Service Brigade would conduct a combined operation. Objectives: secure the harbor, neutralize coastal batteries, establish a beachhead, push inland to St. Helier. Expected resistance: significant. Intelligence reported that German forces had spent 4 years fortifying the islands. Concrete bunkers, artillery positions, machine gun nests, beach obstacles, minefields both above and below water. Weather had been monitored closely. August 17 offered acceptable conditions. Low visibility would provide concealment during approach, but would lift by dawn to allow naval gunfire adjustment. Tides were favorable. Moon phase provided minimal illumination. The window was narrow. The plan was detailed. Every unit knew its role. Rehearsals had been conducted on similar beaches in southern England. The flotilla had departed Portsmouth at 21:30 on August 16. Crossing time: 5 hours. No German naval activity had been detected. No air reconnaissance had spotted them. The approach had been clean. By 02:30, the landing craft were in position, engines throttled back, waiting for the signal to begin the final run to shore. Gun crews on the destroyers stood ready. Artillery officers had their firing solutions prepared. Medical personnel aboard support vessels had set up casualty receiving stations. Everything was ready. The attack was scheduled to begin in 28 minutes. The Commodore held the radio message in his hand. It had come from Channel Fleet Headquarters. 3 lines of text, encrypted, decoded by his signals officer 60 seconds earlier. He read it a 3rd time. The message was clear. The wording was unambiguous, but the implications were vast. 16 landing craft, 1,200 men, An invasion force committed and positioned. And the message said, "Stand by, execute hold, await further orders." British amphibious assault doctrine had been refined through hard experience. Deep in 1942 had taught brutal lessons. The Sicily and Normandy landings had incorporated those lessons. Speed was essential, surprise was critical. Once an assault force was positioned offshore, delay increased risk. German forces might detect the fleet. Defensive preparations might be enhanced. Weather could deteriorate. The window could close. Every man in the landing craft had been trained for this. Weeks of preparation, physical conditioning, weapons drills, beach assault simulations. They knew the sequence. Naval bombardment begins, landing craft accelerate toward shore, ramps drop, men disembark into water or onto beach, advance under fire, secure objectives, consolidate. The first minutes would be chaos. Casualties were expected. Medical training had been intensive. Each man knew his rally point, his unit assembly area, his primary and alternate objectives. The commandos were elite troops, veterans of North Africa, Italy, Normandy. They had conducted opposed landings before. They understood that the transition from craft to beach was the most vulnerable moment, exposed, weighted down with equipment, moving through water or across sand. German machine gunners would have clear fields of fire. Artillery would target the beach. Mortars would bracket the landing zones. The bombardment was meant to suppress these defenses, but suppression was never total. Men would die in the first minutes. This was accepted. This was why they had trained. The timeline was precise. At 03:00, naval guns would open fire. 15 minutes of sustained bombardment. At 03:15, the first wave would hit the beach. Second wave at 03:22. Third wave at 03:29. Each wave had specific tasks. First wave, breach obstacles, suppress immediate defenses, mark cleared lanes. Second wave, advance inland, secure strong points. Third wave, bring forward heavy weapons, establish fire support positions. The sequence had been rehearsed until it was automatic. Support elements were positioned. Engineers with Bangalore torpedoes and demolition charges. Signalers with radio equipment. Medics with stretchers and morphine. Heavy weapons teams with Bren guns and mortars. Each man carried ammunition, rations, water. Weight averaged 30 kilograms. In the water, it would be heavier. On the beach, it would slow movement. These calculations had been made. They were acceptable. The expectation aboard every landing craft was the same. Within minutes, they would be moving at full speed toward a defended beach. Within half an hour, they would be fighting for their lives in the streets of St. Helier. By dawn, they would either have secured a foothold or would be dead, wounded, or retreating. This was what they had prepared for. This was what was about to happen. The engines idled. The men waited. The time was 02:51, 24 minutes to H-hour. At 02:53, the Commodore transmitted to all craft, hold position, maintain radio silence, stand by. The message was brief. It offered no explanation. Craft commanders acknowledged with a single click of their transmitters. The landing craft continued to drift. Engines remained at idle. Men sat in their assigned positions. Some glanced at each other, most stayed still. No one spoke. Minutes passed. 02:56, 02:58, 03:00. This was the moment when naval gunfire should have begun. The destroyers remained silent. No muzzle flashes, no thunder of guns, just the quiet slap of water against hull metal and the low rumble of diesel engines. 03:03. 15 minutes to planned H-hour. Still no orders. Craft commanders maintained position. The flotilla drifted slightly with the tide. The fog had not lifted. Visibility remained poor. The shore was invisible. The men in the landing craft waited. Some checked their weapons again. Unnecessary, everything had been checked. Some shifted position to ease cramped muscles. The waiting stretched. 03:07, 8 minutes to H-hour. A craft commander keyed his radio requesting clarification. The Commodore's response was immediate. Maintain silence. Hold position. The craft commander acknowledged. The waiting continued. 0310, 5 minutes to planned H-hour, still nothing. The timeline was collapsing. If the bombardment did not begin within minutes, the landing could not proceed on schedule. Daylight would arrive. Surprise would be lost. The entire operation depended on darkness and precision timing. That window was closing. No explanation had been given. No new orders had been issued except to wait. The men in the landing craft sat in silence. The operation that had been greenlit, authorized, launched, and positioned was not proceeding. It was simply paused, stopped in the water, stopped in real time. 03:15 arrived. H-hour, the moment when ramps should have been dropping and men should have been storming ashore. Instead, the landing craft continued drifting in the fog. Engines at idle. No movement toward shore. No acceleration. No naval bombardment. Just silence and the sound of water. The men began to understand that something had changed. The operation was not proceeding, but no explanation had been given. Whispered questions passed between some troops. Officers made small gestures. Quiet, stay alert. The discipline held. No one stood. No one raised their voice. But the confusion was visible in faces, in the tension of waiting muscles, in eyes that kept moving to watches and then to the darkness where the shore should be. 03:20. 5 minutes past H-hour. The second wave should have been approaching the beach now. Instead, all craft remained stationary. The Commodore had received no further communication from Fleet Headquarters. He had transmitted a brief query at 03:12 requesting clarification. No response had come. Radio silence from above. He stood on his bridge, watching the seconds tick past on the bulkhead chronometer. His orders were to hold, so he held. Craft commanders had the same awareness. Timing was everything in an amphibious assault. The plan was built on synchronized movement. One delay cascaded into others. If they waited too long, dawn would expose them. If German forces detected the flotilla, the element of surprise was lost. If they were caught in the water at first light, they would be vulnerable. These were not theoretical concerns. These were tactical realities every craft commander understood. Yet the order was to wait, so they waited. 03:30. 15 minutes past H-hour. The entire invasion timeline had collapsed. The third wave should have been landing now. Instead, no wave had landed at all. The men sat in their craft, weapons ready, objectives memorized, but motionless in the dark water. The psychological toll of sustained readiness with no release was mounting. Adrenaline prepared the body for action. When action did not come, the body did not know how to process the tension. Some men closed their eyes. Some took slow breaths. Some stared at nothing. 03:45. 30 minutes past H-hour. Darkness would last perhaps another hour. The tactical window was shrinking. If they did not move soon, the operation would have to be canceled. Dawn assault was possible, but casualties would be higher. The advantage of surprise would be gone. These calculations were being made silently in the mind of every officer present. Still, no new orders came. The Commodore checked his radio equipment. Functional. The channel was clear. Headquarters simply was not transmitting. The flotilla floated in silence, an invasion force frozen in the moment before assault, waiting for a command that did not come. At 04:07, a new transmission reached the Commodore. This one was longer. It provided context. The message contained information received by Fleet Headquarters during the night. German military authorities on Jersey had transmitted a communication through neutral intermediaries. The message had reached London at approximately 02:30 hours, 17 minutes before the scheduled invasion. The German message stated that the garrison commander on Jersey was willing to discuss terms for the peaceful handover of the island. He cited the isolated position of his forces, the collapse of the strategic situation in France, and the welfare of the civilian population. He requested a 48-hour suspension of any assault to allow negotiations to proceed. The message had been authenticated through available channels. It appeared genuine. The decision had been escalated rapidly through the British command structure. At the operational level, the choices were stark. Proceed with the invasion as planned, casualties certain, outcome likely favorable but not guaranteed. Or pause to determine if the German offer was legitimate. If legitimate, the islands could be secured without bloodshed. If a deception, the delay would cost tactical surprise but would not make the mission impossible. At 02:45, the decision was made at the highest available command level in the middle of the night. Pause the operation. Do not proceed with the assault. Do not withdraw the forces. Hold in position pending further intelligence and evaluation of the German offer. The message had been transmitted immediately. It reached the flotilla at 02:47. The Commodore had ordered the hold. The invasion had stopped. The reasons made operational sense in the moment. 1,200 British commandos were at risk. The German garrison was large and well fortified. Casualties in an opposed landing would be significant. If those casualties could be avoided through negotiation, the attempt was justified. The islands would still be liberated. The timeline would be compressed by perhaps 2 or 3 days at most. The strategic outcome would be the same. The cost in lives would be vastly different. The calculation was tactical and practical. It was not sentimental. It was a command decision based on the information available at that moment. An opportunity had presented itself in the narrow window between final preparation and execution. The decision was made to explore that opportunity before committing forces to combat. The invasion that had been greenlit was stopped in real time because the situation had changed in real time. No one aboard the landing craft knew this. They knew only that they were waiting. The officers knew slightly more, that new orders would come. But the full context was held at command level. The men sat in their craft and waited because that is what soldiers do when orders are not clear. They maintain discipline. They hold position. They trust that decisions are being made at levels above them. And they wait. At 04:23, the Commodore received new orders, clear and definitive. Abort Operation Constellation. Withdraw to Portsmouth. Maintain formation. Proceed AT standard cruising speed. The Commodore transmitted to all craft, operation cancelled. Form up for return. Execute withdrawal. Craft commanders acknowledged. Engines were throttled up. The 16 landing craft began to turn. Formation was re-established. The flotilla oriented south. Within 10 minutes they were underway, moving away from Jersey at 12 knots. The destroyers fell in as escort. The entire force withdrew in good order. No announcement was made to the troops beyond the minimal information. Operation cancelled, returning to base. The men absorbed this in silence. Some relief was visible, some frustration. Most showed nothing. They had been prepared to fight. They had been held in suspension for over an hour. Now they were leaving. The psychological arc from preparation to combat to stand down was incomplete. There was no clean resolution. Just the vibration of engines and the movement of the craft through dark water. By 05:00, the flotilla was 10 kilometers from Jersey. Dawn was breaking. The fog lifted. Visibility improved. Looking back, some men could see the island emerging from darkness. Lights in St. Helier, the harbor they had been scheduled to assault. It looked peaceful, quiet, unchanged. They turned away and focused forward. Portsmouth was 5 hours away. The crossing back was routine. No enemy contact. No incidents. Men tried to sleep. Some succeeded. Most sat in silence, processing the night. Equipment was not disassembled. Regulations required maintaining readiness until return to base. So they sat with their weapons and their gear, traveling away from a battle that had not happened. At 10:15, the flotilla entered Portsmouth Harbor. Docking procedures were standard. The men disembarked in order. They were directed to assembly areas. Debriefing would come later. For now, equipment return, weapon cleaning, stand down. The process was mechanical. The men moved through it automatically. Within 2 hours, the landing craft were empty. The invasion force had dispersed. The operation had ended not with combat but with administrative procedure. No casualties. No shots fired. No enemy engaged. No objectives taken. The operation existed in planning documents and in the experience of those who had participated in its preparation and aborted execution. It existed nowhere else. Operation Constellation was not recorded in most official histories of the Channel Islands' liberation. The actual liberation occurred through negotiation. German forces on Jersey and Guernsey surrendered on May 9, 1945, the day after VE Day. The surrender was peaceful. British forces landed unopposed. Civilians were freed without battle. The outcome was bloodless. The August 17 invasion that nearly happened left minimal documentary trace. The operation order existed. After-action reports were filed, noting the operation was cancelled prior to execution. No analysis was required because no action had occurred. The decision to abort was documented at command level as a response to changed circumstances. No further explanation was deemed necessary. The 1,200 commandos who had sat in landing craft for 2 hours, ready to assault, moved on to other operations. Some participated in the Walcheren landings in November. Some fought in the Rhine crossings in 1945. Some were killed in subsequent actions. Some survived the war. For those who remembered August 17, it was an oddity, a mission canceled after launch, a battle that did not happen, not a story worth repeating, not an achievement to commemorate. The German garrison commander who had initiated contact did not become a figure in historical narratives. His decision to seek terms in August 1944 was overruled by higher German command. The islands remained occupied for 9 more months. His initiative in August had no immediate effect except to halt one invasion for 1 night. His name does not appear prominently in Channel Islands histories. The British officers who made the decision to pause the invasion and then to cancel it received no recognition. Command decisions that prevent violence do not generate the same documentation as those that execute it. The calculation that 1,200 British lives and unknown German and civilian lives might be preserved was never formalized in award citations or commendations. It was simply a decision made at a moment in time, based on available information, recorded minimally, and then overtaken by subsequent events. The operation became a footnote, if mentioned at all. Most accounts of the Channel Islands note that liberation was considered in 1944, but postponed. They do not describe how close the liberation came to being attempted by force. The 1,200 men sitting in darkness 3 kilometers from a hostile shore, the timeline running, the order to abort coming with minutes to spare. These details exist in archives, in unit war diaries, in fragmentary personal accounts. They do not exist in the larger historical narrative. The Commodore who commanded the flotilla continued in the Royal Navy. He retired in 1958 as a rear admiral. His obituary mentioned service in amphibious operations, but did not specify which ones. Operation Constellation was not among his documented achievements because it had not been achieved. His decision to hold the flotilla in position and then to withdraw in good order was tactically sound. It was also unremarkable. Commanders made such decisions regularly. This one was recorded only in operations logs. Many of the commandos who participated in the aborted operation did not include it in their personal narratives of war service. When asked about their experiences, they described actual combat, Normandy, Walcheren, Germany. They did not describe the night they sat in a landing craft waiting for an invasion that never occurred. Memory selects for action, for resolution, for narrative. A canceled operation offered none of these. Some veterans mentioned it briefly in letters or diaries. One wrote, "We went all the way to Jersey and turned around. No explanation given at the time. Later heard the Germans wanted to negotiate." Another noted, "Prepared to land. Order came to hold. Then we came home. Strange night." These fragments exist in archives, accessible but rarely accessed. They provide glimpses of the event but do not constitute a complete record. The German garrison commander who initiated the August contact survived the war. He was held as a prisoner until 1947. He returned to Germany and died in 1962. His military records indicate he served on Jersey until the surrender in May 1945. His August communication to British authorities is noted in some German military archives, but was not highlighted in his service summary. It was one of many attempts at negotiation in the final year of the war. Most failed. This one succeeded in stopping an invasion for one night, but the larger outcome, peaceful surrender, did not occur until 9 months later. The civilian population on Jersey did not know how close an invasion had come. They knew British forces were advancing on the continent. They hoped for liberation. They did not know that on August 17, 1,200 British troops had been positioned offshore, ready to assault. The invasion that did not happen was invisible to those it would have most directly affected. Liberation came eventually, peacefully, through negotiation. The alternate path, the violent path, remained hypothetical. August 17, 1944 was one date among thousands in the war. Operations were planned and executed across multiple theaters. Some succeeded, some failed, some were canceled. Operation Constellation belonged to the last category. It was prepared, launched, positioned, and then stopped before execution. The historical record shows it as a canceled operation. This is accurate but incomplete. For 2 hours, 1,200 men sat in landing craft 3 kilometers from a hostile shore, prepared to storm that shore, waiting for an order. The order did not come. Instead, an order to withdraw came. The men returned to Portsmouth without firing a shot. The Germans remained on Jersey for 9 more months. The islands were eventually liberated peacefully. The invasion that was greenlit and then stopped in real time exists now primarily in archives. Operations orders, war diaries, a few letters and memoirs. The men who were there are mostly gone. The officers who made the decisions are gone. The Germans who would have defended are gone. The civilians who would have been caught between them continued their lives, unaware of what nearly happened. The silence that followed the operation is nearly complete. No battle, no casualties, no commemoration, no monument, no historical marker. Just a canceled operation order and the memory of those who experienced the pause, the moment when violence was prepared, authorized, launched, and then prevented. The weapons that were ready. The beach that was not assaulted. The fight that did not occur. The invasion stopped in real time, and in the stopping, lives were preserved, British, German, civilian. How many is unknown. What would have happened is unknowable. What did happen is simple, nothing. The landing craft withdrew, the war continued, the moment passed. And the silence that began on that dark water 3 kilometers from Jersey has never been broken.